The great iron clock hanging above King's Cross Station seemed to command the entire city. Its black hands moved steadily through the pale autumn afternoon while clouds of steam drifted beneath the vaulted glass roof. Porters hurried across the platforms pushing carts stacked with trunks. Conductors shouted final instructions. Travelers embraced, argued, laughed, and departed beneath its watchful face. Yet among the hundreds of souls crowding the station that day, only two people seemed unaware of the noise surrounding them. Lady Rosalie Whitmore stood near the edge of Platform 3, her gloved hands clasped tightly before her. The bustle of London faded whenever she looked at the man standing opposite her. Duke Sebastian Ashford wore a dark traveling coat fitted perfectly across broad shoulders, but the confidence usually associated with his title had vanished from his face. He looked not like one of England's most powerful noblemen but like a man being asked to leave behind the only thing he truly valued. A sharp whistle echoed somewhere down the tracks. Neither moved. For nearly 2 years their affection had grown in secret. Society would have approved of their friendship. Society would have applauded polite conversation during dinners or dances. Society would even have tolerated harmless admiration. But love was another matter entirely. Sebastian belonged to one of the oldest and wealthiest families in England. The Ashford name opened every door in Parliament, every ballroom in London, and every drawing room in the kingdom. Rosalie came from noble blood, but her family's fortune had long since faded. Her father possessed dignity and lineage, yet little wealth remained. Many believed Sebastian should marry an heiress. Many believed Rosalie should be grateful merely to receive his attention. Neither cared. The truth was simple. Somewhere between summer gardens and winter carriage rides, between letters exchanged beneath moonlit windows and conversations stretching late into evening, they had fallen deeply and completely in love. Rosalie lowered her gaze briefly. "Must you go?" The question carried no accusation. Only sadness. Sebastian reached for her hands. "I must." She nodded. Duty was not something a duke could easily escape. An important matter involving family estates abroad required his presence in France. Lawyers, contracts, and property disputes demanded immediate attention. Every delay threatened complications that could affect thousands of acres and countless tenants. Yet neither of them feared the journey itself. They feared separation. "I shall return within weeks," Sebastian said softly. Rosalie tried to smile. "That is what you said yesterday. And the day before. And every day before that." His smile finally appeared. Then perhaps repetition proves sincerity. A laugh escaped her despite the tears threatening her eyes. Sebastian lifted one gloved hand and pressed a gentle kiss against her knuckles. The station around them seemed to disappear. "I mean every word." She searched his face. Many women admired Sebastian Ashford because of his title. Others admired his fortune. Rosalie loved him because she never doubted his honesty. That certainty made leaving harder. Another whistle sounded. Passengers began boarding. The train's engine released a low growl of steam. Time was running short. Sebastian glanced toward the clock. Then his expression changed. A decision settled across his features. Carefully he reached inside his coat and removed a small velvet box. Rosalie frowned. "What is that?" Instead of answering, he opened it. A sapphire ring rested inside. The stone glowed like captured midnight, surrounded by delicate diamonds that reflected the station lights. Rosalie inhaled sharply. She recognized it immediately. The ring had belonged to Sebastian's mother, the late Duchess of Ashford. It was the most treasured possession he owned. "Sebastian." He gently took her hand. "This belonged to the woman I admired most in this world." Emotion tightened his voice. "My father gave it to her when he asked for her hand." Rosalie stared at the ring. Her heartbeat seemed louder than the station itself. "I cannot accept this." "You can. It is far too precious. That is precisely why I wish you to have it." The sapphire sparkled between them. Sebastian closed her fingers around it. "When I return, I will place it on your hand myself." Rosalie's breath caught. The words carried greater weight than a proposal. They carried certainty, promise, future. His eyes never left hers. "I love you, Rosalie Whitmore." The station disappeared completely. "I love you," she whispered. For a moment neither spoke. Neither needed to. The future seemed beautifully simple. Weeks apart. A joyful reunion. A wedding. A lifetime. What neither of them noticed was the tall figure standing near a newspaper stall across the platform. Lord Edmund Blackthorne watched silently from the shadows. Sebastian's cousin. His closest living male relative. His likely successor if anything prevented the Duke from producing an heir. Edmund's eyes fixed upon the sapphire ring, upon Rosalie, upon the future being promised beneath the clock. Bitterness hardened his features. For years he had waited for fortune to favor him. For years he had imagined Ashford wealth eventually finding its way into his hands. Now one woman threatened everything. As the final boarding call echoed through the station, Sebastian embraced Rosalie tightly. "I shall write every week. And I shall answer every letter. Then we have an agreement." She nodded against his shoulder. Neither realized another man had already decided to break it. 3 weeks after Sebastian's departure, Rosalie stood alone beside her bedroom window holding a doctor's letter in trembling hands. Beyond the glass, rain slid down the dark London streets. Her pulse raced as she read the words again. Then her free hand drifted slowly to her stomach. Tears filled her eyes. A smile followed them. At last she understood why she had felt so different. She was carrying Sebastian's child. Overwhelmed with joy, she immediately sat at her desk and began writing a letter. She did not know it would be the first of many. She did not know none would ever reach him. The first letter was written with trembling excitement. Rosalie filled 4 pages describing the news. She could barely believe herself. She told Sebastian about the doctor's confirmation, about the future growing quietly beneath her heart, and about the sapphire ring she carried everywhere like a promise. She sealed the envelope with a smile and delivered it personally to the post office the following morning. No reply arrived. She waited another week and wrote again. Still nothing. By the 3rd letter, concern had begun to replace excitement. By the 6th, concern had become worry. By the 10th, worry had hardened into fear. Winter descended upon London with relentless determination. Frost coated rooftops each morning. Bare branches rattled against windows during long nights. Coal fires burned constantly, yet somehow every room inside the Whitmore residence felt colder than before. The whispers began quietly. Neighbors lowered their voices whenever Rosalie passed. Old acquaintances suddenly discovered reasons to look elsewhere. Women who once greeted her warmly now offered stiff nods and hurried away. At first she pretended not to notice. Then her growing stomach made pretending impossible. One afternoon, while walking through the market, she heard 2 ladies speaking behind her. "That is her. The Duke's abandoned sweetheart? So they say. How humiliating." Rosalie continued walking. Her face remained calm. Only when she reached home did she allow herself to cry. Even then she cried not because they mocked her. She cried because part of her feared they might be right. Yet every night she opened the small wooden box containing the sapphire ring. Every night she remembered Sebastian's voice beneath the station clock. Every night she whispered the same words. "He will come back." Her father wanted desperately to believe it as well. Lord Whitmore had always treated Sebastian with respect. He had seen genuine affection in the young Duke's eyes. He had believed marriage would eventually unite the 2 families. Now doubt weighed heavily upon him. Public disgrace arrived faster than either expected. Invitations disappeared. Friends stopped visiting. Business associates became distant. The Whitmore family's already fragile finances began deteriorating rapidly. Stress etched itself into Lord Whitmore's face. The winter seemed to age him years within months. One snowy evening Rosalie found him sitting alone beside the fireplace, staring into the flames. "You should rest," she said gently. "So should you." She smiled faintly. Neither moved. After a long silence he finally spoke. "Do you still trust him?" The question lingered between them. Rosalie looked down at the sapphire ring resting on her finger. "Yes." Lord Whitmore nodded slowly. He wanted to believe her. He truly did. Yet hope had become difficult to carry. 3 weeks later he collapsed while walking through the garden. The doctor came immediately. It changed nothing. Years of declining health, combined with months of worry and humiliation, had exhausted what strength remained. Rosalie sat beside his bed through his final night. Snow drifted softly beyond the window. Candles flickered against pale walls. Near dawn he squeezed her hand weakly. "You are stronger than you know." Tears blurred her vision. "Please don't leave me." His tired smile carried both sorrow and pride. "You already have someone who needs you now." His eyes drifted briefly toward her stomach. Then he closed them. The room became unbearably quiet. By sunrise Rosalie Whitmore was alone. The funeral passed beneath gray skies and falling snow. Few people attended. Fewer offered comfort. Afterward, creditors began appearing almost immediately. Bills accumulated. Savings vanished. The house that had sheltered generations of Whitmores slowly emptied. Rosalie sold jewelry first, then paintings. Then furniture. Each possession carried memories. Each sale felt like surrendering another piece of her past. Still no letters arrived from Sebastian. Still she continued writing. Dozens of letters filled the months. Some hopeful. Some angry. Some heartbroken. All unanswered. Far across the sea, Sebastian Ashford knew nothing of her suffering. A violent storm had transformed a mountain road into a ribbon of mud and ice. His carriage overturned while descending a steep hillside. Horses panicked. Wood splintered. Metal twisted. When rescuers finally reached him, they found him unconscious beside the wreckage. For several days physicians doubted he would survive. He eventually opened his eyes. Survival came with a cost. Large portions of memory had become fragmented. Names vanished. Dates blurred. Entire conversations disappeared. Faces drifted through his thoughts like distant ghosts. The doctors considered his recovery remarkable. Sebastian did not. Something felt missing. Something important. Weeks passed inside recovery rooms smelling of medicine and candle wax. Letters from business partners arrived. Letters from relatives arrived. No letters came from Rosalie. Because Edmund ensured everyone vanished before reaching its destination. At first Sebastian assumed delays were responsible. Then he assumed illness. Eventually uncertainty became hurt. If she had wished to write, surely she would have. The conclusion wounded him more deeply than any physical injury. Yet despite everything, certain images refused to disappear. A railway clock. A pair of gray-blue eyes. A sapphire glimmering beneath sunlight. A woman's laugh carried by autumn wind. The fragments haunted him. As winter deepened, his memories gradually began returning. Not all at once. Piece by piece. A conversation. A promise. A kiss. Then one freezing morning everything suddenly rushed back. The station. The ring. Rosalie. The child he did not yet know existed. The realization struck with such force that he nearly fell from his chair. Every forgotten promise returned. Every emotion returned. Every certainty returned. Within hours he was making arrangements to leave. Doctors protested. Sebastian ignored them. Nothing mattered except reaching England. Nothing mattered except finding Rosalie. Meanwhile, beneath a sky heavy with snow clouds, Rosalie wrapped a blanket around her infant son and stepped from a hired carriage outside King's Cross station. Theodore slept peacefully against her chest, unaware of the storm that had shaped his short life. Steam rolled across the crowded platforms. Travelers hurried through the cold. Then, somewhere beyond the drifting snow, a train whistle echoed through the city. Rosalie lifted her eyes toward the tracks as her heart began to race. The train carrying Sebastian Ashford was finally pulling into the station. Snow drifted through the iron arches of King's Cross station like scattered feathers from a torn pillow. Steam curled across the platforms in thick white clouds, swallowing travelers before revealing them again a moment later. The great clock hanging above the station watched silently as hundreds of passengers hurried through the cold. Porters pushed luggage carts over wet stone. Conductors shouted destinations. Children clung to parents. Soldiers embraced wives. Everywhere there was movement. Only one woman seemed rooted in place. Rosalie Whitmore stood beneath the clock where she had last seen Sebastian Ashford 5 months earlier. Time had changed her in ways no mirror could fully reveal. Grief had softened the brightness once present in her eyes. Sleepless nights had left faint shadows beneath them. Poverty had replaced fashionable gowns with simple clothing carefully mended by hand. Yet something remained untouched. Hope. It was smaller now. More fragile. But it still lived. Wrapped in a blanket against her chest, baby Theodore slept peacefully. His tiny face remained hidden from the cold. One small hand rested against Rosalie's heart as if reminding her why she had endured everything. The train whistle sounded again. Closer this time. A ripple of anticipation spread through the station. Passengers moved toward the platform edge. Heads turned. Voices lowered. Rosalie's pulse quickened painfully. 5 months. 5 endless months of waiting. 5 months of unanswered letters. 5 months of humiliation. 5 months of wondering whether the man she loved had forgotten her completely. She tightened her grip on Theodore. Part of her wanted answers. Another part feared them. The distant train finally emerged through falling snow. Its black engine rolled forward like some enormous beast breathing steam into the winter air. The brakes shrieked. Metal groaned. The train slowed. Then stopped. For a moment, everything seemed suspended between past and future. Doors opened. Passengers began descending. Businessmen. Families. Travelers carrying trunks. An elderly couple. A young officer. None of them were Sebastian. Rosalie's heart sank. Then she saw him. He stepped from the final carriage wearing a dark wool coat dusted with snow. The months abroad had changed him. His face appeared leaner. The easy confidence she remembered seemed replaced by something quieter, harder. Yet there was no mistaking him. Sebastian Ashford. The man she had loved. The man she had waited for. The man she believed had abandoned her. The crowd faded into silence inside her mind. Sebastian stopped moving. His eyes found hers instantly. For one endless moment neither spoke, neither breathed, neither seemed capable of movement. 5 months of longing stretched between them. Rosalie saw recognition flood his features, then confusion, then disbelief. His gaze shifted downward, toward the child in her arms. Everything changed. The color drained from his face. Theodore stirred beneath the blanket. Sebastian stared. Rosalie saw questions forming behind his eyes. Questions that should never have existed. Questions that broke something inside her. The pain she had carried for months suddenly surged to the surface. The grief, the loneliness, the humiliation, the funeral, the sleepless nights, the unanswered letters, the tears. All of it. Her composure shattered. "You came back." The words escaped as little more than a whisper. Sebastian took a step forward. "Rosalie." The sound of her name nearly destroyed what remained of her restraint. Tears filled her eyes. "No." His expression tightened. "Please let me explain." "Explain?" The word echoed louder than she intended. Several nearby travelers turned to look. Rosalie barely noticed. Months of pain were pouring out now. Unstoppable. Her voice trembled. "I waited for you." More people stopped walking. More faces turned. Still she continued. "I waited through every day." Her tears began falling. "I waited through every night." The station gradually grew quieter. Passengers sensed something important unfolding. Something deeply personal. Something heartbreaking. Rosalie's voice cracked completely. "I waited 5 restless months for you." Silence spread across the platform. Even the distant sounds of luggage and conversation seemed to fade. The accusation hung in the cold air. Everyone heard it. Everyone understood it. A young woman carrying an infant. A wealthy duke standing before her. The conclusion appeared obvious. Whispers immediately began spreading. "He abandoned her. Look at the child. Good Lord. How shameful." Several travelers glanced toward Sebastian with open disapproval. One older gentleman folded his arms angrily. A woman beside him shook her head. The crowd had already chosen a villain. Rosalie barely noticed them. Her attention remained fixed entirely upon Sebastian. Months of heartbreak poured from her like water breaking through a dam. "I wrote to you." Sebastian stared at her. "I wrote again and again." Confusion deepened across his face. "When father died, I wrote." His expression shifted. "When Theodore was born, I wrote." The crowd gasped softly. Theodore. Even hearing the child's name seemed to affect Sebastian. "I told you everything." Rosalie wiped tears from her cheeks. "I told you how frightened I was." Another tear followed. "I told you how much I needed you." The station had become completely silent now. Nobody wanted to leave. Nobody wanted to miss what happened next. Rosalie looked directly into his eyes. "You promised you would come back." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "I did." "You promised you would write." "I did." "You promised I would never face this alone." Pain flickered across his features. "I know." Rosalie laughed bitterly through tears. "No." She shook her head. "You don't." The words struck harder than any accusation. For a moment Sebastian seemed incapable of speech. His eyes moved again toward Theodore. The child opened sleepy blue eyes. For the first time father and son looked at one another. Something profound passed across Sebastian's face. Wonder. Confusion. Recognition. The crowd watched the moment unfold. No one spoke. No one moved. Then Sebastian looked back at Rosalie. She expected excuses. Perhaps guilt. Perhaps apologies. Perhaps lies. Instead she found something entirely different. Genuine bewilderment. As though the story she had lived for 5 months was completely unknown to him. The realization unsettled her. Sebastian took another careful step forward. His voice was low, almost fragile. "Rosalie." Snow drifted between them. Steam curled across the platform. The great clock continued counting seconds overhead. Then Sebastian asked a question that shattered every certainty she possessed. A question so unexpected that even the crowd seemed stunned. His eyes never left hers. His voice carried no anger. Only confusion. Only hurt. Only disbelief. Why did you stop writing to me? The question seemed to freeze the entire station. Snow drifted lazily through the iron arches overhead. Steam rolled across the platform in pale waves. Hundreds of travelers stood motionless around them, caught between departure and revelation. Rosalie stared at Sebastian as if she had misheard him. Her tears continued falling. What did you say? Sebastian's expression remained unchanged. Pain lingered behind his eyes. Why did you stop writing to me? The words struck her harder than any accusation could have. For a moment she could only stare. Then disbelief erupted through her grief. Stop writing? Her voice rose. I never stopped writing. Sebastian frowned. Rosalie took a step forward. I wrote every week. Another step. Sometimes twice. Her hands trembled. When Father became ill, I wrote. The crowd watched silently. When Father died, I wrote. Sebastian's face paled. When your son was born, I wrote. A murmur passed through the station. Rosalie's voice cracked. I wrote until I ran out of hope. The silence that followed felt enormous. Sebastian stood perfectly still. Every word seemed to strike him like a physical blow. Slowly he shook his head. I never received them. Rosalie blinked. The station seemed to tilt beneath her feet. What? I never received a single letter. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The possibility hanging between them felt impossible. For 5 months both had suffered. For 5 months both had waited. For 5 months both had believed themselves abandoned. The realization spread visibly across the faces of those watching. Perhaps this story was not what they had assumed. Perhaps there was another villain. Sebastian glanced toward the crowd. Then back at Rosalie. I wrote as well. Now it was Rosalie's turn to stare. I sent letters every week. Confusion replaced anger in her eyes. I told you where I was. His voice grew tighter. I told you when I would return. Rosalie's breathing quickened. I never received anything. The truth emerged slowly, painfully, like dawn breaking through storm clouds. Someone had prevented their letters from reaching one another. Someone had wanted them separated. The thought settled heavily upon the platform. Nearby, an elderly station master suddenly stepped forward. His gray mustache twitched nervously. I beg your pardon, Your Grace. Sebastian turned. The old man removed his cap respectfully. I couldn't help overhearing. Speak. The station master hesitated. Then his eyes widened slightly. Good Lord. Sebastian frowned. What is it? I remember something. The old man looked toward Rosalie, then back toward the Duke. Over the past months, there was a messenger. The crowd listened carefully. He came often. What messenger? A gentleman employed by Lord Edmund Blackthorne. Sebastian's expression hardened instantly. The name landed like a stone dropped into still water. Rosalie felt her stomach tighten. The station master continued. He regularly collected correspondence addressed to Your Grace. Sebastian's jaw clenched. Collected it from where? The sorting office. Several passengers exchanged startled glances. The old man swallowed. At the time, nothing seemed unusual. A pause followed. Now it seems very unusual indeed. The silence grew heavier. Rosalie remembered Edmund. Polite smile. Cold eyes. Always watching. Always calculating. Sebastian remembered him too. Perhaps more clearly than ever. A terrible possibility began forming. Find the station clerk responsible for handling private correspondence, Sebastian ordered. The command carried the full authority of a duke. Several railway employees hurried away immediately. Within minutes, a nervous middle-aged clerk was brought forward. His face turned pale when he recognized Sebastian. The questioning began. At first the man denied everything. Then he hesitated. Then he began sweating. Finally he broke. Lord Blackthorne instructed me. Gasps erupted throughout the station. The clerk lowered his head. He paid generously. Sebastian's eyes darkened. What exactly did he instruct? The man swallowed. Any letter addressed to you from Lady Rosalie was to be redirected. Rosalie's breath caught. The clerk continued miserably. And any letter sent by Your Grace to Lady Rosalie was to be intercepted. Shock swept through the crowd. People who moments earlier had condemned Sebastian now stared in disbelief. The pieces were falling into place. Every missing letter. Every unanswered plea. Every month of suffering. All deliberately engineered. Sebastian looked as though he wanted to tear the station apart with his bare hands. Rosalie suddenly felt weak. All those nights crying beside candlelight. All those desperate letters. All those unanswered prayers. None of it had been abandonment. Someone had stolen them. 5 months of their lives had been stolen. The realization nearly brought her to tears again. Yet the truth was not finished revealing itself. Sebastian slowly turned toward the crowd. "There is something else you deserve to know." His voice carried unusual gravity. Rosalie looked up. So did everyone else. Sebastian inhaled deeply. 3 weeks after leaving England, my carriage overturned in France. The station fell silent once more. I nearly died. Rosalie stared at him. He continued. 4 months I remained under medical care. Pain flickered across his face. When I awoke, portions of my memory were gone. A shocked murmur spread. I could not remember entire conversations. His gaze found Rosalie. I remembered fragments of you. Her eyes filled instantly. A laugh. His voice softened. A pair of eyes. Another pause. The promise beneath the station clock. Tears slipped down Rosalie's cheeks. Sebastian looked away briefly. Without your letters, I believed you had chosen to move on. The confession hurt to hear. Yet somehow it hurt less than believing he had abandoned her willingly. For the first time, the nightmare began making sense. The silence between them had not been chosen. It had been created. Rosalie finally understood why he never came. Sebastian finally understood why she stopped smiling in her letters that never reached him. 5 months of grief suddenly transformed into something else. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Understanding. Then movement near the station entrance drew everyone's attention. A tall man in an expensive coat strode confidently through the crowd. Lord Edmund Blackthorne. He wore the smile of someone expecting victory. The smile vanished the moment he saw Sebastian standing beside Rosalie. It vanished completely when he noticed hundreds of eyes fixed upon him. The crowd parted. No one greeted him. No one smiled. The station master stepped forward. The clerk stepped forward. Several witnesses stepped forward. One by one. Truth after truth. Fact after fact. Piece after piece. Edmund's confidence crumbled visibly. The conspiracy unraveled before the entire station. The evidence became impossible to deny. The letters. The bribes. The messenger. The deception. Everything. At last silence returned. Edmund stood exposed before nobles, workers, travelers, mothers, soldiers, merchants, and strangers alike. His future collapsed around him. Yet strangely he began laughing. The sound echoed unpleasantly through the station. Then his gaze settled upon Rosalie and Sebastian. Bitterness twisted his features. You may know the truth now. Neither answered. Edmund's smile sharpened. But truth cannot return what was taken. His eyes locked onto Rosalie, then onto the child, then back to Sebastian. And with cruel satisfaction, he delivered one final wound. Even if she forgives you, your grace, she will never forgive those 5 months. Silence settled across King's Cross Station after Edmund's final words. The snow continued falling beyond the iron arches. Steam drifted through the winter air. Hundreds of people remained gathered around the platform, yet no one spoke. Every eye rested upon Rosalie Whitmore. She stood motionless, Theodore sleeping quietly against her chest. Edmund's cruel statement lingered in the air. Even if she forgives you, she will never forgive those 5 months. For a moment, it seemed possible that he might be right. 5 months could not simply disappear. 5 months of loneliness could not be erased. Her father's death could not be undone. The tears she had shed beside darkened windows could not be reclaimed. The nights she had spent wondering why Sebastian had abandoned her would always exist. The pain was real. The wounds were real. The loss was real. Sebastian knew it. That was why he did not argue. That was why he did not defend himself. That was why he did not speak immediately. Instead, he looked only at Rosalie. Not at Edmund. Not at the crowd. Only at her. Then Theodore stirred. A tiny cry escaped the child. The sound broke the tension like a crack through ice. Rosalie instinctively rocked him gently. Before she could calm him, Sebastian stepped forward. His movements were careful, respectful, almost hesitant. He stopped before her. May I? Rosalie looked down at the child, then back at him. Something inside her softened. Slowly she nodded. Sebastian carefully lifted Theodore into his arms. The station watched in complete silence. The Duke stared at the child as though seeing a miracle. Theodore blinked sleepily. His small fingers curled around Sebastian's coat. Emotion flooded Sebastian's face. Wonder. Love. Regret. A father's recognition. For months he had unknowingly missed every moment. The first kick, the first cry, the first smile, all of it gone. Not because he chose absence, because someone had stolen it from him. His eyes filled with tears. The crowd saw them. Nobody had expected that. A duke was supposed to remain composed, powerful, untouchable. Yet there was nothing untouchable about Sebastian Ashford now. He looked like a man discovering the cost of lost time. Theodore yawned. A faint smile touched Sebastian's lips. Then he turned toward the crowd. His voice carried clearly across the platform. "This child is my son." Gasps rippled through the station. The words echoed beneath the iron roof. Sebastian held Theodore closer. "His name is Theodore Ashford." The crowd remained silent, listening, witnessing. "He is my son." His voice strengthened. "He is my blood." Another pause. "And one day he shall be heir to Ashford." Shock swept through the station. The declaration changed everything. Many noblemen spent fortunes hiding scandals. Many aristocrats abandoned women to protect reputations. Many fathers denied responsibility. Sebastian had done the opposite. Publicly. Without hesitation. Without conditions. Without shame. Theodore was no longer an abandoned child. He was acknowledged, protected, claimed. Edmund's face turned pale. The future he had spent months trying to secure vanished in a single sentence. An heir now existed. A legitimate future existed. His ambitions were dying before his eyes. Sebastian ignored him completely. He turned back toward Rosalie. The station seemed to disappear once again. Only they remained. The same man. The same woman. The same clock hanging above them. Yet everything had changed. Rosalie looked at him through tears. Part of her wanted to run into his arms. Part of her still remembered every lonely night. Sebastian seemed to understand both. His voice lowered. "I cannot ask you to forget." The honesty startled her. "I would never insult your suffering by pretending it did not happen." Rosalie felt her breath catch. The crowd listened carefully. No excuses followed. No attempt to shift blame. No effort to minimize her pain. Only truth. Sebastian continued. "You waited alone." His eyes glistened. "You buried your father alone." Rosalie lowered her gaze. "You carried our son alone." A tear slipped down his cheek. "You suffered consequences that should have been shared." The station remained utterly silent. Every word mattered. Every word was earned. Sebastian stepped closer. "I know now that I was not responsible for the deception." His voice trembled slightly. "But I was absent." Rosalie looked up. "I was not there when you needed me." His gaze never wavered. "And for that I will regret those months for the rest of my life." Something broke inside Rosalie. Not painfully. Gently. Like a frozen river finally thawing. Because he understood. Because he was not asking her to ignore what happened. Because he was carrying the weight with her. Sebastian took a long breath. "There is another truth everyone deserves to hear." The crowd leaned forward. Months earlier, while recovering abroad, influential members of the Ashford family had attempted to secure a political marriage. A wealthy heiress. An advantageous alliance. A future designed for power rather than love. The arrangement had never been completed. Now Sebastian addressed it openly. "There will be no political marriage." A murmur swept through the station. "There will be no alliance." His voice grew stronger. "There will be no bride chosen for wealth." Rosalie stared at him. Sebastian looked directly into her eyes. "Titles mean nothing without the right person beside you." The station seemed to hold its breath. "Estates mean nothing." He shifted Theodore gently in his arms. "Inheritance means nothing." Another step forward. "Power means nothing." Then his voice softened. "You mean everything." Tears streamed freely down Rosalie's face. Several women within the crowd began crying. Even hardened railway workers wiped at their eyes. The moment felt larger than any of them. Because everyone understood what was truly being restored. Not reputation. Not status. Love. The love that should never have been separated. Sebastian handed Theodore carefully back into Rosalie's arms. Then he did something nobody expected. Something no duke was required to do. Something no crowd could have demanded. He dropped to one knee on the freezing platform. Gasps erupted everywhere. The great Duke of Ashford knelt before a woman who had once been ridiculed by society. Snow drifted beyond the station windows. Steam curled around them. The great clock ticked overhead. Time itself seemed to pause. Sebastian looked up at her. His eyes shone with emotion. Then he spoke the words that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. While you waited 5 restless months for me, I spent 5 restless months trying to find my way back to you. Rosalie covered her mouth. Tears fell freely now. Sebastian continued. If I could trade every title I possess for those lost days, I would do so without hesitation. A sob escaped somewhere within the crowd. Another followed. Even strangers were crying now, because every person present understood the truth within those words. Lost time was the one thing no fortune could buy back. Sebastian reached into his coat. From an inner pocket, he produced the small velvet box that had traveled across countries and oceans with him. The sapphire ring rested inside. The same ring, the same promise, the same future. Only now it carried deeper meaning. He opened the box. Lady Rosalie Whitmore. His voice was steady despite the tears in his eyes. I loved you before the separation. The station fell silent again. I loved you through it. Another pause. And I will love you long after it. Rosalie trembled. Sebastian smiled softly. Will you finally allow me to keep the promise I made beneath this clock? The tears in her eyes became joyful. For 5 months she had carried the ring, protected it, believed in it. Now she reached forward. Her fingers touched the sapphire. Then she slipped it onto her hand. The station exploded. Applause thundered through the platform. People cheered. Some laughed. Many cried openly. Even the station master wiped tears from his weathered face. Across the platform, Edmund Blackthorne stood utterly defeated. Not merely ruined. Forgotten. Because nobody was looking at him anymore. The crowd had chosen a different ending. Months later, beneath that same clock, Sebastian and Rosalie were married. Theodore watched from his father's arms as vows were exchanged and promises renewed. The station that had once witnessed heartbreak now witnessed healing. The following winter, a train departed through softly falling snow, carrying the Ashford family toward a future no longer haunted by silence. Rosalie rested her head against Sebastian's shoulder and listened to the steady rhythm of the wheels. Theodore slept peacefully beside them. Outside, white fields stretched endlessly beneath the pale sky. She smiled and whispered the words she had carried in her heart for months. You came back. Sebastian kissed her forehead and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. I was always coming back. For the first time in 5 restless months, neither of them had to wait anymore.